I want you to think about your work life for just a second, please. I know there's a decent chance you clicked on this because you're using the time to try to escape thinking about work, but I swear, it's important here for you to think about your job. Imagine being in your job for over 15 years and being really, really good at it for essentially the entire time. And for much of that tenure, it's gone rather unnoticed how good you are. That would be unfair, right? You'd hate to know that your many years of great service have gone a little overlooked by the people who see you do your job from the outside looking in. It might be even crazier than that to say, this has been happening to one of Major League Baseball's best relief pitchers since 2009. It should be impossible for a Major League Baseball player whose career has now lasted from their early 20s to very soon hitting 40 to go unnoticed by the casual fan, especially when they haven't really lost a step on their game even in their late 30s. That's what makes relief pitcher David Robertson so special. In 2024, he was still one of MLB's most effective relief pitchers, and he did it throwing more this past year than he'd ever had. Imagine that. You've been great through your 20s and deep into your 30s, and then at 39 years old, you get to work at the most volume you've ever had, and you're still amazing and don't suffer any real decline in quality over that expanded time on the job. David Robertson is an outlier. And it's time for you to know just how good he's been since before Up was making people cry in the theaters.
As David Robertson, a right-hander, comes out of the bullpen to make his 23rd appearance of the year. He's a rookie who made his Major League debut with the Yankees against the Mets at Shea Stadium.
The only time in his career D-Rob has pitched at least 30 innings in a season and was not an above-average run preventer was in 2008. Yes, he's been around so long, his first home ballpark was Old Yankee Stadium. Robertson was a 23-year-old rookie in 2008, only 2 years removed from pitching in college at the University of Alabama. But even still, back in George W. Bush's presidency, Robertson was really good at preventing home runs. You've still got a few steroid-era guys kicking it in 2008, by the way, and was striking out over 25% of the batters he'd face. Which, also, he has done in every full season of his entire career. By 2009, the Yankees definitely didn't understand what they had. He didn't make the team out of spring training and didn't get regular big league activity until late May. But from when they called him up through the end of the season, he had the best strikeout rate in the American League. They obviously didn't make the same mistake come playoff time, and he saw 5 postseason games and 5 1/3 postseason innings. He did not allow a single run in any of them. The Yankees win the 2009 World Series, in part due to D-Rob's contributions. 2010 was just a regular old good year for D-Rob. New high in innings pitched, got better at not allowing homers, strikeout rate was still good, yada yada yada. What I really need to talk about is 2011. 2011, David Robertson had one of the most special relief pitcher seasons of his era. He wasn't the closer, he was still in Mariano Rivera's shadow, which is why people really never caught wind of this, unless they were the biggest Yankee fans or baseball nerds imaginable. But I'll start by saying this. Here are some big leaguers from 2024 that had a lower wins above replacement value this past year than David Robertson had as a setup man with just 66 2/3 innings in 2011. .108 ERA too, the same rate of run prevention as Jacob deGrom's injury-shortened but potentially MVP caliber 2021 if he stayed healthy. Here, let me put it like this. ERA Plus takes the rate at which a pitcher gives up runs and makes it so that every pitcher ever is on an equal playing field, based on what their various time period or stadium circumstances are like. 100 is always average. 125 is always good. David Robertson in 2011 had a 3.99 ERA+. The best in the league that year, as a matter of fact. If 100 was average, then David Robertson was like Thanos in Fortnite type dominant. He had 100 strikeouts as a relief pitcher, going a rate of roughly 40% of his innings without giving up any hits, and placing in the MVP vote as a secondary reliever.
A sensational season for you. You had to be very proud of your season last year.
Yeah, last year just turned out to be a little better than I really could have expected.
He wasn't even being used as the top guy out of the pen, and he was that untouchable. Also, see this clip of him giving up a homer? That's the only time anyone took him deep all season. For the rest of his Yankees tenure, he was just quietly great. After 2 more outstanding but less outstanding than 2011 seasons as Mariano Rivera's setup guy, they finally turned the closer keys over to him in 2014 after Rivera retired. Think about that for a second. In trying to replace the greatest relief pitcher in MLB history, the Yankees decided David Robertson was the guy they wanted for the job. He was the one they found worthy of being placed in the impossible role of filling Mariano's shoes. He had a good year as the Yankee closer in 2014 before hitting the open market for the first time in his career. And the Chicago White Sox saw everything we've talked about to this point and more, splurging on a 4-year deal worth more than $10 million per season on their new star closer. Robertson responded by just being alright. That's the thing about great athletes, or greatness in general. When someone great slips in quality, even just a little bit, it's all the more noticeable. White Sox fans likely don't have the fondest memories of D-Rob, but they still did get a good, effective relief pitcher during his 2.5 seasons there. He was like not walking anyone in 2015 compared to his norms before or since. It just happened to come in the least valuable, fully healthy season of his career. You may have noticed I said he was a White Sox for 2.5 seasons after saying he was a 4-year deal. In what may have secretly been the most obvious twist of all time, they flipped him back to the Yankees in the summer of 2017, and he was immediately a godsend for a playoff caliber Yankee team. He had one of his best stretches at any point in his career for the rest of the 2017 regular season, pitched 3 1/3 scoreless innings in a winner-take-all playoff game against the Twins, picked up the win in the winner-take-all series-clinching Game 5 against Cleveland after going 2 solid innings there too, until everything unraveled for him in Game 6 against Houston, and the Yankees were knocked out 1 game later, 1 win short of going back to the World Series. But aside from the 2017 Astros teeing off on him for 1 postseason game at their home stadium, mind you, if you know you know, Robertson was nearly untouchable as a Yankee in his first stint back. Again, 6 years after his 2011 peak, which is an eternity for relief pitchers. He was 32 years old now doing this. He's not some young projectable piece like he was when he was first coming up onto the scene for these same Yankees. This right here should have been living proof that he was special, and had carved out a very nice career for himself right then and there. But unbelievably, his most impressive career arc had yet to come. Robertson had another solid season in the Yankee bullpen in 2018 before becoming a free agent again, where he landed a 2-year deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. Normally, athletes and entertainers of any kind, really, use agents to negotiate deals on their behalf. Playing ball is one skill. Commanding the most value you can in a negotiation is a totally different one. So players tend to delegate. In Robertson's 2018 free agency, he made a decision he has stuck with for the entire rest of his career. He was going to be his own agent. Robertson himself handled the entire free agency process on his own. That is highly unusual and extremely impressive, especially considering he'd go on to do it way more than just this once. Off the top of my head, I think Richard Sherman is the only other athlete in sports I can think of that has done this. He was also going to have to do something else extremely impressive around this time: recover from Tommy John surgery at 34 and 35 years old. 7 games into his Phillies tenure, which had been an early season struggle for Robertson, it was determined that he needed Tommy John surgery to repair his pitching elbow. It kept him out for all of 2019, and after some setbacks in rehabbing the injury, all of 2020, which might have been for the best, all things considered, 2020 season and all, although I will point out that the 2020 Phillies had arguably the worst bullpen ever, and healthy D-Rob almost surely would have prevented that from being the case. After missing all of 2020 and nearly all of 2019, Robertson was in a sticky situation. Better find him out. He was 35 years old now, unemployed, rusty, and coming off of injury. A lot of guys in this spot, especially those who have already made the money D-Rob has, are fine with just tapping out. You've had a great career, you've won a World Series, and you've got money in the bank. Time to go be a family man in the woods or something like that. Not David Robertson though. He wanted back in, and to do it, he needed to prove he could still pitch in the summer of 2021. Big league teams were hesitant, having not seen him at his best for a few years now. So he settled for pitching 2 games for an independent league team in High Point, North Carolina, and a couple outings on the U.S. Olympic baseball team in Japan, which is mostly comprised of over-the-hill veterans, like it seemed Robertson might have been, or non-major league players. It's in the middle of the MLB season, after all. The best of the best are not here. To the uneducated, this might have been further proof that David Robertson was completely washed. To the Tampa Bay Rays, they saw an opportunity, giving him a chance to continue proving himself in minor league action for them, something he hadn't consistently done for anyone since 2009. He didn't care. He pitched well, and amazingly, David Robertson was pitching for a first-place Tampa Bay Rays team that September. An awesome comeback story in and of itself. The results weren't amazing, but why would they be after all he went through just to scrape and claw for incomplete, short-term play? He pitched in 3 playoff games for the Rays that year. Who in the world would have saw that coming? But that's just the kind of dog David Robertson has buried within him, and he was about to ride this second chance back in the big leagues as long as he could. He negotiated himself a new deal to start 2022 with the Chicago Cubs and was great again. 89% above average ERA, great strikeout numbers, and his best peripheral stats in 5 years. He had immediately re-established himself as one of the most desired relievers in baseball, getting sent back to the Philadelphia Phillies again for the second half of the season. They wanted him back as a real bullpen playoff piece down the stretch. And to make the story even better, his first go of it with the Phillies was filled with struggles and premature injury. His second included picking up a save on the road in Game 1 of the World Series. That's right, playoff David Robertson was back, and maybe at his best, giving up just 1 run in 8 games for the 2022 Phillies in the postseason. He turned that into another 1-year deal with the New York Mets, was forced into being their top reliever after the guy in front of him blew out his knee celebrating a win in the World Baseball Classic, and was still just as indispensable as ever. The 2023 Mets failed for reasons difficult to articulate. He really was still an effective closer on a team that was supposed to be great, though. He was flipped mid-season to the Miami Marlins because they were actually in playoff contention, and the Mets weren't, and D-Rob struggled for them. It was noticeable because, as you may have noticed, D-Rob doesn't really struggle all that often. To cement that this was the exception and not the norm, even as D-Rob was pushing 40, he turned in a great 2024 for the Texas Rangers. Yet another time Robertson put himself in a great situation and delivered. It's impressive enough to get knocked out of baseball by missing nearly 2 full years to injury and then coming back in your late 30s as a great reliever. It's even more impressive when you're doing it in a way where you're legitimately one of the best of the best. Since 2022, his rate of being barreled up by opposing hitters has progressively declined, while the value of his fastball, more specifically his cut fastball, is climbing. His cutter is one of the most effective pitches in all of baseball now, and it moves so much more than the average righty cutter. Last year he threw it 64% of the time, going seemingly all in on his biggest strength, and it worked. I want to thank Lance Brozdowski of Marquee Sports for pointing this out to me. 39-year-old David Robertson in 2024 was one of only 3 pitchers in all of MLB last year with 14 inches of glove side break on their fastball. In his words, he was as close as you can get to Kenley Jansen and Emmanuel Clase. One of those guys is a probable future Hall of Fame closer. The other had the best reliever season as far as awards consideration goes since 2008, when D-Rob's career started all those years ago. It is very uncommon for relievers relievers this old and this deep into their careers to still have their pitches be this sharp. In fact, it's a lot like the man he once inherited the Yankee closer job from, the greatest reliever of all time. D-Rob is not Mariano. I'm not saying he is, but to even create parallels to him is amazing, especially by genuinely thriving at an age well past where you can run for president of the United States. And that makes for an incredibly interesting discussion about Robertson's future. There are 3 relief pitchers from this generation considered likely Hall of Famers: Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, and Aroldis Chapman. All 3 have had some of the best reliever careers of all time, but they're slowing down significantly as they age. 2024 proved that, in at least some way for each of them, they're not the same level of dominant as they used to be, if dominant at all. That's normal as you get older. Expected even. But to me, it's an indication that they're not going to tack much more onto their career values. I mentioned wins above replacement earlier. WAR, which is, the acronym for that, expresses an estimate of total contribution a player brings to their team, down to one number. While never the truly dominant closer those other 3 once were, David Robertson's lifetime value is up there with those guys, and he is by far the best positioned to stay good for a few more years and tack even more value on. He's like Gandalf. Even as he ages, he can still go into battle and be one of the best guys you can bring into the fight. He is already the 16th best reliever of all time by the stat that balances lifetime WAR with peak WAR. He's got a really good chance to add on to that in his early 40s if he feels like he can still play. Newsflash, he's shown every indication that he can be great, not just still play. I, for one, am very excited to see what the next few years hold for him, assuming he still plays. He's been very good for literally 20% of all big league teams already. I would love for more fan bases to get to see it for themselves. So what happens when he is ready to hang him up? There's a world where he goes down as the greatest setup reliever that has ever played this game. There's a world where his value is just as good as these future shoe-in Hall of Fame relievers. There's a world where, hear me out, Robertson can earn a place with those guys if he's able to stick the landing with a handful of years like what he's done since reestablishing himself in the 2020s. I truly believe a guy this talented and this resilient can do it. And if you have any doubt about how D-Rob can stack up against future Hall of Famers, I'll close this story out on one final note. June 12th, 2024, D-Rob comes into the 8th inning of a 2-run game against the Dodgers. All 3 of Robertson's next opponents are former MVPs. One of them's a current MVP. They're all current All-Stars, titans of the game, and future first ballot Hall of Famers. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman. With the fate of the game resting on Robertson, he strikes all 3 of them out. Inning over, Rangers win shortly thereafter. Like Gandalf, an old man went in to fight a Balrog in the Dodgers lineup and came out victorious. And then, on June 13th, 2024, literally the very next night, Robertson got himself into a jam against the Dodgers. A single and a hit by pitch to their 8 and 9 hitters in the lineup creates a whole lot of trouble in a 2-run game in the 8th inning. Same situation, only this time he's at risk to blow this thing. It's happening again, in every sense of that statement. David Robertson had done it again on back-to-back nights, striking out the side against 3 living legends of baseball in a make-or-break spot in a game. Are you serious? If you have any doubt David Robertson can hang with the best of the best, he more than proved that he can. Because whether you knew it or not, he is also one of the very best to ever do it.